I think if you genuinely love and have a passion for the thing you want to try, you owe it to yourself to do it. You just have to do it. Because what are you going to do? Like, just not do the thing you like? You have to do it. You have to try it. Don't worry about people not liking it or your friends making fun of you or whatever. Just do it for you and do it because you love it.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Cameron is wildly funny with a brilliant balance of depth and humor. His uniqueness and authenticity radiate throughout the whole conversation. I also love how Cam shouts out his friends and acknowledges how they've played a crucial role not only in his career, but also in his life. It is so awesome to hear someone talk about their friends in such an amazing light. He also has really deep and wonderful reflections and insights. That is, it's really cool to hear about his internal honesty and how he looked deep within. It is wonderful. As Cam says, the vibes were immaculate. He is so easy and fun to talk to. I love this chat and I think you'll love it too. Before we get into it, Cameron is currently touring his show around Australia. Check them out before they sell out. Links are in the episode notes. Okay, let's get into it. Cameron James is an award-winning stand-up comedian, musician, and storyteller across stages, screens, boomboxes, and podcasts. As seen on the Melbourne International Comedy Festival Gala, Spicks and Specks, Mont-Spelling, Bump, and plenty more, he's won countless rave reviews for his completely unique rockstar without a band comedy style, blending songs as catchy as they are funny, painfully true stories, and sharp improvisation. Cam partnered up with Aussie music legend Ben Lee's indie record to release his own comedy music with his single Medium Dick, racking up tens of thousands of Spotify streams and over 9 million views on Instagram and YouTube. His most recent 1-hour solo shows, Electric Dream and Mixtape, have sold out around the country, earning him the Director's Choice Award at the Sydney Comedy Festival and a nomination for the highly coveted Most Outstanding Show Award at Melbourne International Comedy Festival. He's won multiple awards, including the Raw Comedy National Runner-Up in 2012, multiple Orgy Awards for Best Comedy Writer, and an APA Award for Best Entertainment Podcast. Cam has appeared on television screens in Bump, Utopia, What the FAQ, Question Everything, At Home Alone Together, and his own comedy special on ABC's Comedy Next Gen in 2018. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about his love of Mike Myers, being stabbed and giving up being in a band, full circle moments with music, embracing his voice and authenticity, new shows coming up, collaborating buddies and thriving together, working with Ben Lee, getting a pilot made, rejection, trying new things, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out at 3:30 Melbourne Australian time, with the full video of the podcast to be released the following day. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's get into it. But I want to talk about probably Australia's biggest podcast ever, Mic Check. Tell me about it. What did it feel so?
Oh, man. Mic Check was, for anyone who doesn't know, a podcast that myself and Alexi Toliopoulos did for a few years. The premise of the show was that we would rewatch every single Mike Myers project. Mike Myers, of course, being Austin Powers, Shrek, The Love Guru. And we'd watch all of his films, all of his sketches on SNL, anything he'd ever done, and review them. And then very quick, I think within about one episode, it went from being let's seriously review Mike Myers' work to how much can we troll the audience? How much can we troll guests? How much can we make this out to be the most serious and important investigation ever when really it's just incredibly silly? And honestly, a big bit of joy that we got was, was like wasting people's time. We got a lot of joy out of wasting audience people's time, out of guest time. It just seemed so funny to us, and I love it. I still think it's one of the funniest, stupidest things I've been involved in, I would love to do more of it because Mike's back on the scene.
Yeah, I saw him on SNL the other day, or I saw some clips. But also, I want to go back to wasting people's time because this is the funniest concept. As a stand-up, you're all about like getting that joke out there as quickly as possible. And here you're kind of against it. And then you also had like comedy legends. I think you had Hamish, or maybe Hamish and Andy.
Yeah, we had Hamish and Rove, and a bunch of Will Anderson. We had so many people on and wasted all of their time.
That's so. Did it become like a goal later on? Like, tell me a bit about it because it's so funny from a comedic point of view.
I can't remember exactly how it started. I just think we thought it was humorous to get on someone who really doesn't have much time. For example, Rove McManus, who came to my shitty little apartment in Sydney where I was living at the time, and he only had an hour. And he's a lovely guy, but he was just like, hey, guys, I've only got an hour. I have to run out of here and go do some radio or something real. And it just became really funny to Alexi and I to, like, I think for that episode, we forced him to host the episode almost as if it was a retrospective, like a look back on the history of Mic Check.
That's so good.
And I don't know, we just found that really funny to force famous people into situations like that where they had to play along to our rules.
I love this on so many levels. And also Rove doesn't like do podcasts. He is like the busiest person in Australia. I wonder if you remembered, how did he find it when you're like, hey, you're the host, so you're doing this? Because they're obviously there for the banter, or are they still taken aback?
I think Rove loved it. Rove's so funny. He's and he just loves to play. Like his background comes from, I mean, if you look at, he comes from community TV, which was a lot of fucking around, and from stand-up, obviously. But if you look at the shows he's made, they were ensemble shows, really, with just people that like to fuck around with him, like Peter Hellier and Husey and stuff. And I think he just kind of got the game really quickly. He understood that this was sort of a piss take of podcasts and of the media and everything. And he got on board. He loved it. He's such a great dude.
I love that. I don't know, go on.
No, I love that show. I wish Mike was putting out a movie every couple of years so that we could keep doing it regularly.
Was each episode on like a movie or a skit? Like, could you come back to it and go, you know what, I saw Gold member for the 18th time. Let's do another episode about it.
Yeah, I think we did Gold member like 3 or 4 times. We definitely repeated things. And some episodes were not even about Mike Myers at all. They would just be about other Saturday Night Live adjacent movies. Like we did all the Dana Carvey movies. And I think some Tim Meadows ones and Will Ferrell ones and stuff. I actually think there is scope for it if we were to do it again, you know, maybe just to do it about SNL produced feature films. Yes. Because I love those movies because I grew up watching them, you know, like the shitty ones too. Like
they're the best.
Like The Ladies' Man and Night at the Roxbury and stuff like that. I just love those movies so much, and they're a bit shit. They're a bit cheap. They're all over 20 years old, so you can like make fun of them and not really hurt anyone's feelings, hopefully. Yep. But also there's a genuine love for them as well.
I love that, and I grew up on those shows as well. If I could get his manager or agent's number, because I tried to get him many years ago, that he said he doesn't like to do podcasts because he doesn't like talking about himself. However, because this is like in a weird reality, would you consider getting him on and bringing it back? Have you ever tried? Getting
Mike? Yeah, we did try because he put a book out about 6 or 7 years ago called Canada. It was like, it's really great. I've got it on my bookshelf actually. It's a love letter to Canada and to his love for the Toronto Maple Leafs and his start in like sketch comedy in like the Second City up there in Toronto and stuff. So he was doing press at the time for that. And we got in touch with his press PR people and really, I think we came as close as we could possibly come.
Oh, wow.
But he also just wasn't into it. And I think the idea, like us saying, hey, we've got a podcast all about Mike Myers where we just keep watching his things and talking about them. I think that sort of would have been freaky.
Yeah, that he would need a really big background check on that one just to see how normal you guys are.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, we did try, but yeah, I mean, if you could try, I would appreciate it.
Well, I can't ask on your behalf. I can only get the email, but you've already got the email. You went further than me. But what I find it amazing about this is that you're kind of doing it for like or it became like troll purposes. And then I believe it really helped with your comedy style. Like it brought out like, you probably had this before, but like weirdness and niche. Did it help your confidence and your voice and your career doing this podcast?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think we started doing a podcast together, Alexi and I, when maybe I was 3 or 4 years into doing stand up, and I'd never really done radio or anything. So I overthought everything I said, and I was so self-conscious, and also like because I was 24 or 25 or maybe like in my late 20s, I wanted to seem cool all the time. So even just like the way I spoke was like, yeah, man. And like, yeah, I think that movie's cool. You know, like I spoke differently, and I was really like aware of getting my opinions out there. Like I want everyone to know that I have good taste, and I want everyone to see that I'm into David Lynch movies and I like David Bowie records and all this shit. But doing that show, there was a few things, but doing that show was one of the things for sure that led me to embrace the goof factor.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, just like care a little bit less and have fun and just prioritize the laugh. And yeah, for sure. Like the work I've done with Alexi has probably changed my life, like creatively, but also personally, because he opens up so much. He's such a great person to collaborate with and to be a friend with, because he opens up everything.
Can you expand on that? Because I love when you find dream teams collaboration. I think it's the most important thing, especially from stand up. You know, it could be an individual sport. You also have Becky Lucas, who's amazing. We've had her on the podcast. But when you meet the right people and they can open you up, I think that transforms everything, not just the career, as you said, but also your life. Can you expand on that? It's so cool.
Sure. Alexi and Becky, I put them both in the same category. They're two people that are two of my best friends. Ooh. They're two of the funniest people I know. And they've also, both of them have changed my life. I don't know how to be specific about either of them, but other than to say, I was a very anxious, kind of closed off person, especially through my 20s. I was super worried about how I was perceived and self-conscious and nervous in social settings. And I would either not be listening to what was going on around me because I was too in my own head, or I would come into a social situation with things I wanted to say. Like I had a plan, you know what I mean?
Pre-prepared jokes or
exactly, or just, opinions or whatever. But both of those guys have given me a lot of confidence in who I am just as a person, because they got to know me as friends, and then they would just tell me that I was funny and tell me that I was good and tell me that I was natural. And Becky in particular, I remember being kind of giving me some tough love at one point and saying, the way you talk off stage is the way you should talk on stage and on microphone, because I don't know, she was giving me a compliment. She was basically saying that I'm funny enough. I don't need to try so hard, basically.
Yeah.
And both those guys, they're two of my best friends, and they've just, made everything a lot easier and a lot better for me. And my fucking anxiety levels are down as a result, because I care less these days, which is good.
You don't understand how much I love this. Like I haven't had people quite like that, but when you meet someone who kind of sees you where you're at, like for example, you mentioned Becky, who gave you that tough love. and how it just, seeing you where you're at, and it just fosters the creativity. It allows you to kind of thrive, get you out of your own head. We all need people like that, and I'm sure you've been like that for them. But how nice, isn't it? You mentioned you're doing comedy for a few years before. Isn't it so nice just being like, oh, I don't need to care about that stuff. I don't need to care. I don't need to exert myself. I can just be myself.
Totally.
Has that, obviously your life's been a lot easier, but do you find that's helped the career as well?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember early on, I tried to do like every type of thing you could do with stand up as well, like almost every style. If you like look at stand up styles, like there's one liner comics and there's story comics and there's like dark comics and physical comics and all this shit. I think I tried to do everything because I just like have a lot of creativity in me, but I didn't know how to focus it. And I was also really worried about, I don't know, like being good or being perceived as good. And I don't know, I was really in my head. And I think Alexi was the first person. I think at one point I experimented with writing a funny song and playing that on stage and kind of riffing and telling stories around the songs. And Alexi was the first person who was like, oh, that feels uniquely you. And I think he, like, after the gig, he was like, dude, you're like a fucking rock star without a band. I love that. That feels like what you are. And I was like, oh my God, that's everything. That's what I wanted. Like he just said the thing that I wanted to be, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He kind of manifested it.
Yeah.
Because my background was music and I'd been wanting to try and figure out a way to put music into my comedy for a long time. And he was the first person who saw me trying it and said, this feels like you should do more of this.
I love that. And I feel like that's been a massive like game changer for you. And I want to get back into the bands as well, just finish this point. By meeting like Alexi and Becky, have you been able to have like more fun in your career? Because as we know in this field, it's non-linear. Sometimes you go inverted commas backwards. There might not be work around the corner. I know you do writing as well,
totally.
And acting. There's so many stresses. You might not know when your next paycheck is. Are you able to go more with the flow now?
Yeah, I think so. The last few years, especially, I've been leaning into the fun of all of it because, like you said, it's crazy. It's a crazy industry. There's so many ups and downs. Sometimes you just have periods where you're not working, or you can only get a certain type of work. Like there's definitely been times where I've gotten a lot of writing work, or some acting gigs seem to have all come through at once, but then that tap just turns off. And I'm like, shit, what the fuck am I going to do for money? So I just like go and do every regional gig. I'll tour everywhere because I need to make the money, and that's exhausting being away from my wife and stuff, but so there's lots of ups and downs. But since COVID, and I know every fucking artist is going to be talking about COVID for the next 20 years. So I'm sorry to contribute to that. But I do think COVID, as awful as it was a really great thing for my mental health, because I was forced to stop trying to do comedy. And we had to have almost a year really with no shows and stuff. And in that time, not only did I rediscover my love for music and kind of force and sort of start working on songs and stuff like that, but also I started prioritizing the fun, because I saw how quickly it could all stop. And I was like, man, fuck it. I have to be enjoying this. I have to do everything I want to do rather than what I think people want, from a comedian. Because if I'm not having fun and then all of a sudden this stops or I can't work anymore, then what was the point of any of it?
You don't understand how profound. You're speaking to my soul. So we won't get into the COVID stuff, but isn't that kind of crazy to have kind of that? Was it the gratefulness of like, I can work again, I'm going to enjoy it? Was it the COVID, or was it that year or two or whatever of you just looking deep within and go, I picked this career because it's fun. I can have fun. I can inspire other people. It can bring joy. Was it a combination of things as well?
Definitely a combination, but I think a big element of it was when we stopped work and we had that year or so without shows, I looked back at everything that I'd been doing over the last couple of years, and I realized how much of it was not even for me. It was for what I thought audiences would want, or what, I thought would go well online, or what I thought comedy festival people would want. And I realized that I was just sort of not even doing it for me anymore. It had become chasing the idea of a career or success or something, and not really getting much success, or having like little bits, but never really breaking through in the way that some of my peers were. So yeah, I just changed my attitude and thought, I'm only going to do things that I enjoy now. Only going to talk about things that I think are funny. And if I'm going to be making a life of this, and if so much of my life is going to be me traveling away from my wife and my dog, then it has to be fucking fun for me. So that's when I started bringing music in and started being a bit sillier and just prioritizing the joy of it all, really.
Oh, okay. I'm so happy. That is amazing. And also the radical honesty within yourself to look deep and go, why am I actually doing this? I need to make some changes. And I think I heard you talk about this on Will Anderson's podcast. I could be wrong, which I love. And you saw a special of yours and you looked at it and you didn't love it. You were like, this isn't me. Can you tell me about that experience, if you remember, and why you decided to look back at it and actually, ask yourself those hard questions?
Of course, yeah. Well, look, I never put the thing out, by the way, but
oh, I didn't know that.
This was like between lockdowns. We had a window where we could put on shows again in Sydney, and I put an hour show on and got a bunch of people to come and watch, and paid for it to be filmed. And then, because I have a background in editing and stuff, I was editing it myself. And yeah, I can't remember exactly what I said on Will's, but basically it was a combination of all my best stuff over the last like 4 or 5 years that had been put into this 1 hour. And the idea was, I'm going to put this out and this is going to represent me. This will introduce me to audiences. And it was just like, I didn't know who it was when I looked at all of it. And when I was editing the footage, I was like, this feels like a guy who's just clutching at straws and clutching at anything that could potentially be a thing. Like, there was one-liners, and then there was really, really dark jokes, and then the next joke would be incredibly silly and wholesome, and then the joke after that would be like a pun, and then there was a song, and then there was a long story, and then like it was just so scattershot.
Like a different you in each one.
Yeah, every single, it was like different versions of me that didn't really come together, and it really fucked with my head. But yeah, I can't remember if I said this or not, but I just was really honest with myself, and I just picked the 2 bits that I liked. One was a story and one was a song. And I was like, I'm just going to lose everything else. I'll put those 2 bits out, but also I'll use those as the starting point for what comes next. Nice. And that's pretty much what really, and that was like in 2019 or 20 or something. And that's, when I look back on it, that's pretty much what I've kept. It's just like stories, songs, and a bit of like banter or riffing, or like I'm trying to be present, so like presence.
But also on that, isn't it nice? And I'm sure you were being, because we all have it in this, particularly harsh. Like, I'm sure if someone else saw it, they wouldn't see it to the level of your lens, and that's fine because, you're the comedian, you know what works best. But, going back to that radical truth and like looking deep within yourself, isn't it nice now to look back and go, 1, I was able to actually look within myself, but 2, look how far I've come, I've grown, I've evolved. Like, that's the journey of a stand-up as well, is the growth. You're going to change. Do you look back at it and go, although it was probably very stressful and hard, but like I actually made a really important change for my career?
Yeah, I think, I haven't really thought about it until now, but I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's true. And maybe what you said is 100% true, that like for a stand-up, you need to grow or you need to evolve. And maybe a lot of people don't, because they figure out what works.
Yep.
And it's very hard to walk away from things that work, because all those little dumb jokes that I had that I put into that hour I never released, they all worked. that's why they stayed in the set, you know. But they weren't me. They were like maybe versions of other comedians, or, you know, it was just stuff that mathematically I was like, this is a joke and this joke will work from a formula perspective, you know.
I think that's cool, and also like credit to you for, you know, getting these jokes where you feel like you're not even giving. Well, you didn't at the time, but now you didn't feel you're giving 100% yourself, and they're still doing well. That shows you obviously a very good stand-up. I want to build up to how you incorporate more music, because I think there's an amazing story here. I believe like your life goal early on in your life is that you were part of bands. You did so many different bands, and you thought you would be a musician. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So my whole family's musical. My dad's a drummer and my mum sings. She sang in the church band. My brothers all play multiple instruments.
Oh, cool.
I'm probably the least talented of the crew. Like, I can only play guitar, really. I could kind of
sing.
I can sing, true. Yeah. Maybe I'm a better singer than everyone else in my family. My mum's really good and my nan's really good too. But
Cool.
But my brothers can play like keys and drums and guitar and all that stuff. And so like I'm definitely not as talented as them in that regard. But yeah, so everyone in my family played in bands. All my brothers did too. And I was just obsessed with that. That's all I cared about in high school, especially. I was kind of a crappy student, but I was really focused on the various bands that I played in. And then as I got older, when I was like 18, 19 or whatever, I got really annoying about it. I was really serious and would like have band meetings. And I actually found, because I dug out a bunch of my old songs a few years ago for a live show that I toured around. But I found an email chain from between me and the band that I was in when I was 18 that was like 100 emails. And it's humiliating because every email was me being like, guys, here's my thoughts on the last jam that we had. And it would be like dot points, like, Dean, you need to tighten up the drums. Your 16th notes on the hi-hats were a little bit sloppy. Tom, you need to practice that guitar part. It was really, really horrible.
Can they make eye contact with you now?
We're all still mates, thank God. Thank God they have put up with me and pushed through that, because yeah, it was like humiliating to look at. I couldn't believe how much of a cunt I was and how serious. And like, meanwhile, we're all 18 or whatever. We're all just like, I'm sure for them it was just, fuck yeah, I'm in a band. I get to drink and play my instrument and fuck around. But for me, I was literally like breaking down the song minute by minute and being like, this part needs to be worked on. I think we need to put a key change here. Blah, blah, blah. And I was just as hard on myself as I was on them, but it's horrible, really horrible. I was really serious. I was really anxious to make it. I was convinced I needed to be successful now. And then, that all stopped because I got injured. I got stabbed in the head. Yeah.
You can say it. You don't need to mince your words. It sounds brutal.
It was pretty brutal. Yeah, it was just like a stupid mistake, a teenage mistake. Me and some friends were mucking around with blades, essentially, with knives. Well, it was a scalpel, weirdly. It was like a scalpel that he'd stolen from the science labs at school. And we were just kind of mucking around with it. And I ended up my hand got sliced open and it cut the artery and it cut all the nerves, and one of my fingers was dangling off and stuff like that. And I got a lot of surgery to get my hand back into working condition, to get the finger reattached and all that.
Holy, I didn't realize it was like that. Wow.
It was pretty wild, yeah. But so then I couldn't play guitar, so I was just singing in a band in my 20s. And again, nothing really happened with that. And I was probably, again, like just a bit, I was so anxious, man. I was just like, I needed to make it, and I don't really know why. I think if I was to dig into the why I felt like I needed to be successful now at the age of 19 or 20, I assume it's because I just felt like I wasn't good at anything, and maybe being a musician was the closest I felt to something I was good at, and I wanted to prove to people that I wasn't like shit or a failure.
That is a great awareness then. Like that's really profound, but continue.
Well, I mean, that's still the thing that's in my brain now, right? Like I'm sure the things that you have when you're a kid stick with you. And now, I mean, I try to be a lot more chill nowadays, and I think I am, but every now and then I'll have a moment where I'm like, God, I need to be fucking successful, because that means if I'm not, that means I suck. And then that means that everyone was right or whatever.
So I also have these thoughts, but one, like I've read your resume and I've probably only covered a small fraction. Like you've done it all in this industry and you're still very young as well. Like you have a really impressive career, especially for Australian standards. Do you think like, where do you think that came from? Like you're like other people will think I'm like a failure or whatever. Like, because when I look at you and I've seen your stuff for years, I'm like, this guy's doing really well. Like I'm really proud of you.
Well, that's really nice to hear. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know really, because it's been there since I was a kid, I'd say. Like the idea of maybe it's just feeling like you're the quiet one in a loud family. I have a very big family, and they're all huge personalities, and they're all funny and loud and confident and good athletes, and like,
oh wow.
And just big, you know, like my brothers and I talk about it a bit. Like when we're at family Christmas or whatever, you're pretty much just an audience member to like the 6 people that dominate the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think now that I'm older, I sort of don't care. I find it funny, and I can like, you know, me and my cousins will hang together and kind of hang shit on our uncles or whatever, because we're like, we've grown up in this environment, and we know that we have these loud alpha uncles and alpha aunties as well. Like everyone's a huge personality. But when I was a kid, I think I felt super invisible in that environment and felt like I wasn't heard or seen or listened to. And it's probably all a reaction to that.
Yep.
But now I think the older I get, I think it's kind of funny. I like being at family events now because it's kind of fun being the one in the corner whispering the sarcastic thing about Uncle Paul or whatever. Or actually maybe now because I'm older, I maybe can like insert myself a little bit more and push back on people and start little arguments and stuff. It's a bit more fun.
Yeah, I love that. I've got one family member. He is outrageous. The things he said, and I'm not saying like racist or anything like that. He just says things that you don't understand how he got there. It's like if you look at a car and he's talking about how he was like planting soil, like his brain doesn't work like a normal person.
Yeah, interesting.
I write word for word what he says. Everything in my script is exactly what he said, and my friends just go, "There's no way," and it's like I think he's the funniest character in this particular.
Yeah.
And when he has arguments with my cousins, I will literally get my phone out and I'll say, "Shut the fuck up! What did you just say?" And I'll encourage them to argue so I can get material out of them. And everyone in the family knows but him, and it is like he's giving me a career in screenwriting. I'm so proud of him.
I love that. That's so great. I mean, this is what it's for, right? Like, I think the reason that we are doing what we do and that we are sort of in the creative industries is that we can see this stuff around us that is inspiring, and we're the people that think to write it down or to document it. That's what our job is to like be with our crazy family and go, fuck, he's nuts. I got to recall everything he says. I like what you're saying, where you like will literally get your phone out and write. I always describe it to my friends or to Becky or whatever as like pressing record on the tape recorder in my brain. And it's always an exciting moment. Like Becky, it's shorthand for Becky and I now. We'll like text each other, like just had an Uber ride, recorded the whole thing. And like, amazing. I know that she just means in her brain, you know what I mean? Like it's always such an exciting moment when you realize you're around a huge character and you're like, fuck, I can push them to say crazier and crazier things.
I feel like I'm a puppet master, like when these
Yes.
things are happening. And I'm like, no, but once. And by the way, I change all of the characters' names. I don't change his name. He is the exact same character. I've described him how he is. I've even shown like a Netflix producer this character. And I'm like, I'm not changing anything. I don't care if anyone gets sued. This is the character. Everything about him has to be authentic. And I stand by it. But I like how you can like pull everyone's strings and be like, no, you said this before. And what did you say? And I'm like, material. Like,
I know. Yeah. It's a mode that I find very easy to slip into, and I get so much joy out of it. And my wife knows what I'm doing every time she can see me slip into the mode. Like I get quiet and I'm like listening to everything and calling back to things people said and like asking leading questions because I know they'll say what I want them to say.
Yeah, I could see that you'd be very good at improv.
It's fun. It's fun. I'd love to do improv. I've never really done it. I'd love to do it.
I feel like even through, and I don't remember it as well, but when I did a lot of research for Becky as well, like you guys are just like banter as well, and it's like all improv. Like I feel like you're just doing it in a different format as well.
Yeah, that's true. We do a fair bit of that, I guess. I guess our thing is basically improv, but I've never done structured improv, and I would like to.
I reckon you do well, and Sydney's got a pretty good scene as well. Like they just invite you in some of the classes, and only like 10 people will be watching, so it's not like that big, low stakes.
Yeah, that's cool.
I want to go back to what you said about, like wanting to prove that you're successful. Were there any expectations put upon you from family or friends, or was it more that, you just felt like this is the one good thing that you're at?
No, my parents are really good, and I think if anything, they were scared of me doing anything in the creative field because no one in my family works in the arts or has like worked in media or anything like that. So it was just like an odd world for them to even visualize, which I can understand because I didn't know anyone who worked in the media or in the arts at all either. So yeah, like from the outside, when you're a kid, you're like, I don't even know how to fucking begin. Like, where is it? Where do you go?
Yeah.
So I think my parents insisted that I go to uni and get a degree and stuff. So I did that. It took a long time. I kept stopping my degree to like focus on my band or whatever. It was like a 3-year degree. It took me 6 or something. But
that's how it should be done because
yeah. I'm glad I did it that way. Like, and I'm glad I did it as well because I studied post-production. I got a Bachelor of Communication, but I studied post-production and got jobs in that and now just know how to edit, and it's made me a better writer and a better probably performer from knowing how to do all that stuff just because I understand how it works on the back end of making TV and film. But so they were more just focused on me getting a backup plan or a plan B. I don't think anyone was putting pressure on me other than me. And I think it's just because I was so insistent to prove that I was my own person.
Yeah.
And no one was saying like, you need to make it. You need to be successful. It was just me doing that to myself, basically. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I like how you look back because I think you also tried journalism as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Had, the media degree and all of that stuff, whether you finish or not. I feel like you've been able to apply all of that to your career, especially editing. It's such an underrated skill, but you've learned along the way and, taken certain skills. And I think that's really important. And I know, like you mentioned, it took like 6 years. I did a commerce degree. And although it doesn't help that much, and it was accounting and management, I don't even know what the hell that is. That is literally just the biggest joke of a subject. People like laugh at the arts. Management is the biggest joke. I'm putting it out there. How do you teach management to like 18, 19-year-old kids?
That's so funny.
It's so embarrassing as well. Like I'm embarrassed. But anyway.
That's great.
There are like certain like bits that you take from and you learn. And I think that's important. But also, so I took the gap year. I had breaks. I failed subjects. I don't regret it at all because I needed that time to like grow and learn about myself and have that experience. And
totally. I agree. Yeah. Like smashing out a 3-year degree when you start when you're 18 or whatever, and then, you're 21 and you're now just in the career that you're going to do forever. That's crazy.
It scares me to this day.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
So many of my friends did that,
Same.
and fair enough. And I was kind of jealous of them at the time because they were making money and they seemed to know what they were doing. And a lot of them went into engineering or law or whatever. So they were like real jobs and they get pretty good money almost right away. And meanwhile, I was like living in a shit share house and playing in a band and they would come and watch my band. And yeah, it was just weird. It was a weird time. But yeah, also I wouldn't do it any other way. And I feel
That's cool.
lucky that I get to live a life that's relatively all about creativity and just lets me daydream all the time. It would be nice to have more money, obviously, and maybe one day that will come. But for now, I'm like joy. I take the joy in the fact that most of my job is daydreaming.
I had a guess. Did you watch Seinfeld?
Of course.
So I had the guy that played Peterman, and he talks about how his daydreams have pretty much like guided his entire career, like really honoring his daydreams and like taking note and analyzing it. And he said that's been the most important thing for him. And the way that he said it was much better than what I said.
That's such a good point.
John O'Hurley, and it was just so profound.
He's so funny in that show, by the way. It's unbelievable.
I know.
But yeah, that's such a good point. It's like I can't remember who it was, but I listened to a lot of podcasts about writing and stuff, creatives talking about it. And I'm sure everyone's said a version of it, but the idea that writing is not actually just sitting down and writing. Writing is like wandering around or pottering around your apartment or walking the dog and just letting your brain go wherever it needs to go. And then later on when you're writing it down, that's just documenting the writing.
Thank you for saying that, because when I first started a few years ago, I would spend at least probably 8 to 10 hours in a room trying to write and not having a life whatsoever.
Me too.
And I put so much pressure on myself. And then my best writing has come from being on an airplane and watching people, going for a walk, in the shower, all of that stuff. And then, as you said, documenting. But, I always heard you have to write, like put pen to paper every day for like 5 hours a day. I'm like, no. If you can like document it in your own way, then that's also writing. And so I think like my parents were like worried when I was like doing the writing, like, oh, you didn't do that much writing today. Like not as bad as that. Like, no, I did so much writing. I went to the gym. I went for a walk. I did this. I saw friends. And it's really
it's all up here. Cause I grew up like loving I read Stephen King's book on writing when I was young. And he's like, yeah, I write all day. I just go into the office and I write. And then I think there was a Nick Cave documentary where he does the same thing. He just gets up and puts on a suit, goes into his office and writes. And I thought that's what you have to do. But maybe some people do it that way.
Different ways. There's no one way.
But I think I'm definitely more of the type that I like to just wander around and think and then come back and write it all down later.
I agree. I think that's the best way to be.
Oh, and just quickly on writing, because we're talking about it. Danny McBride, who creates Righteous Gemstones and Eastbound and Down and stuff. I heard him say once that he hates writing, but he loves rewriting. So what he does is whenever he has an idea, he immediately writes it out, even if it's shit, and then puts it away and then comes back the next day and acts as if he's just got a rewrite job on someone else's shit idea.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's just like, what have they done? Oh, yeah, God, that's a bit shit. I would do it like this, and kind of changes stuff, but acts like it's someone else's work. I think that's such
way more. Yeah,
that's a good way to do it, huh?
The worst thing is how I've had to change it because I get really annoyed. I was ingrained by this one writing guy that I wanted him to rewrite one of my movies, and he gave me like I don't know where it is, but it's probably like a 70-page document on how to make every word like just pop. You write in present tense. You don't write Cam is jumping, Cam jumps. That's
Yeah,
supposed to be
okay.
like Cam jumps. So it also saves a lot of words. And this is like, it was a 200-page script at the time, and I got it to probably 150 through that method. And so if I see anything, like I go into like probably a producer mind, I'm like, that person can't write because they don't know these rules and they do all of that, even though that's a silly way of being. So when I'm first writing and it's not like spectacularly written, I'm like,
It's
oh,
annoying.
I can do
I
this.
get
But
it.
I
Yeah.
write now dot points. This is what will happen. They'll say something like this, and then it's so that way there's like less pressure, because the first time you write, it's not even going to fully make sense, not fully formed. So I've had to like
Totally.
change it because I thought there was it. Yeah, it's been a journey there.
Oh
So
man, I'm the same. I get stuck on opening lines, or like if it's a stand-up show, the opening joke, and I can't move beyond it. I mean, I that's the way I used to be. I would just get micro focused on the little details. But since reading that McBride thing, I'm like, now I just shit everything out and then go through and treat it like a punch up job or like a rewrite job. I think when it comes to screenplay, he said that he writes everything in final draft.
yeah,
Like he doesn't even write anywhere else. He just immediately writes the whole treatment in final draft, and then goes through and breaks it down into scenes and all this. That hearing him talk about it changed a lot for me too.
I think
He's
it's
great.
also really important, and it's not just for creativity, it's in life. There's not one way to do something. And as
Yeah.
we both thought, we have to write in a certain way. Stand up has to be a certain way. And I think it's really important that you can thrive in your own way. And that's like one of the key messages of this chat as well. Did you say Danny McBride did like a book or something, or was it a clip?
It was like him on a podcast. I can't remember what podcast it was now, but yeah, he's one of my favorite creators at the moment. So anytime he talks about his process, I'll listen usually.
Oh,
He's
amazing.
great.
And Righteous Gemstone's so funny. I had the lady that plays his wife on the
Oh
podcast
wow,
probably a
yeah,
year
she's
ago.
great. She's
Yeah.
amazing. Mm.
Yeah, and it's super lovely human as well. I want to go back to the bands because I want to build up to everything you've just said. It's lived experience, not just theory with you, which is really, really awesome. The identity side of not being in a band. When you kind of gave that up, what was going on? How did you shift that? Because you would have been, I'm the guy in the band. I have to be successful.
Yeah, man, that's who I was to my friends and who I was to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, because we started dating when I was a guy in a band, and I tried to do a solo thing for a little while, didn't really work. I got just hung up on the details of everything, and then it was like almost overnight an immediate identity shift
Whoa.
to being a guy that was into comedy, because while I was playing in bands and, while I was younger, I loved comedy movies. I loved Seinfeld. I loved sketch comedy. I loved Billy Connolly and stuff. And while I was playing in bands, while we were touring, podcasts had just started. So Mark Maron's podcast and Comedy Bang Bang and a few like that. I think the Nerdist had kind of just started. So while we were driving around, to Sydney or to Melbourne or wherever for gigs, we would listen to comedy podcasts.
Cool.
And I got pretty nerdy about that. And I discovered a bunch of comedians through that. And then, yeah, I think just almost overnight, it was like I decided, no, I'm going to be a comedy guy now rather than a music guy. And I started going and watching open mics and going and watching sketch in Sydney and stuff. And
Nice.
kind of almost pushed music away completely, rejected it almost.
And what was that? Was it like a fear of not succeeding in that regard, or realize that perhaps this is a new avenue you could thrive in?
Maybe a bit of both. While I was at uni doing my post-production stuff, I became really good friends with a guy called Tom, and he was a director. He is a director. And we wrote some scripts together, and we made a couple of short films. Nice. One that I was in, and then one that just someone else was in. Yeah. And they were funny. And so I was already kind of dabbling in the idea of writing funny stuff. And, we'd made some funny short films, and I was listening to a lot of comedy stuff. So I just kind of thought, well, maybe this is an area that I can go down. It's tapping into another side of my creativity that I haven't maybe explored that much. I haven't done performing that wasn't music since high school when I did like drama and stuff, so I did some plays. So it kind of felt like a natural extension of things I'd already done in the past, but just something I hadn't done in a while. And then, I started pretty quickly. So I think I went and watched like 5 open mics, and then I signed up for one. And then very, very quickly I was doing it. And very quickly I was booked as well, because I was I was all right off the bat. Like, I mean, I'm sure I was shit. And if I looked back at myself, I'd be like, that guy sucks.
Yeah.
But because I'd had a lot of onstage experience, I was confident and I was a bit cocky, and I was comfortable bantering with people and doing crowd work because I'd done that as a musician. And so I started getting booked really quickly.
That is crazy. And as you said, all that learned experience was a play. I also reckon naturally you would have been quite good. I believe that one of the main catalysts, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you had various jobs. I think you were, you played Captain Jack Sparrow and you would sing at restaurants. I don't know why you love me. I think it's funny. And you also worked behind a bar and you saw someone, fill in my gaps. He would say he's a comedian, and then you actually saw him do stand up and you're like, my God, this guy is terrible. And that inspired you because you knew you could do better than him. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know if I knew I could do better than him, but it definitely demystified the whole thing. He was a funny guy, and he was funny at work, and we had a good time. But yeah, for like a year, he'd just been telling me that he was doing stand up, and I just assumed he must be on the same level as all the guys that I've been listening to on podcasts, like Mark Maron and Louis C.K.
Rude awakening.
Patton Oswalt.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm like, fuck yeah, okay, cool. He's a comedian, like those guys that I love, And then when I went, it was the first time I'd seen actual local open mic, and it was in Newcastle, and where I grew up, which is suburban Australia. And I just could not believe how bad it was. Like, I really didn't know that it would be bad. I thought everyone here is going to be amazing. I couldn't believe how bad it was. And not like in a way that it's throwing shade, because I've done a lot of open mic and I've been bad at a lot of open mic. And I've been, even recently, I've been really bad. Like, it's just
natural.
It's normal. It's normal to be kind of shit sometimes.
Especially at open mics, new material and all of that stuff.
Totally. But it totally demystified it. Like, I'd put stand up on this platform of like, the people that do it are like touched by some force that's beyond our understanding, and they know how to look into the human soul and find the things that give people joy and all this shit, and like talk about society. But I just saw it for what it was, which is just a local performing art that like anyone can do. There is no barrier of entry.
Yeah.
Anyone can start doing this. And and then that sort of gave me a little bit of confidence too, to go, oh, well, fuck, I can try it. And I started doing it in Sydney when I just moved there, and I didn't know anyone. So I also thought, who cares? Like, if I suck at this, who cares? I don't know anyone. I don't know any of these people. It'll never get back to my friends back home. So whatever, who cares?
That's so cool. And I also love how you're listening to the world's best comedians and naively, which everyone would have done. You then see this guy at an open mic with the glass like shattered. Could you see him in the same light? Like, you had a real ick experience.
I definitely got the ick. I definitely got the ick. But also, like, when I started doing open mics, I was still working a lot of jobs as well.
Yep.
And I'm sure I also bragged to people that I worked with that I was a comedian.
Yeah.
And they would have come and seen me suck as well. Like, this is just the way it is.
Yep.
Like,
I did the same with improv. It was not very good.
Yeah, of course. And you tell your work colleagues, you go, yeah, I've got a gig tomorrow or whatever. And then if they do come, they're seeing you when you're a year into doing something, and you're just like, I don't know, you're kind of a bit shit.
Well, like when I first did guitar and I was at school, so I'm even worse. And after a year, it was a bit longer, but after a few years, they wanted me to play for the school band. like with all the older people. And I knew I was
Mm.
terrible. I quit. This was a very weak moment in my probably 13 or 14-year-old life. And the fact that people would have seen me at that stage
Oh
would
my
have
God.
been horrific. But it
It's
also
crazy.
just shows that, it takes a long time often to get good at something. And I let fear get in the way. But I'm glad that you could get up after a year and, bring your friends to come and see
Oh
you.
my God. I mean, I think I invited everyone to my first Fringe. I think my first year in, I did a Fringe show with two other comedians. Like, we did 20 minutes each or
Oh,
something,
that's good.
one of those things. And I invited so many friends. And then I think none of them saw me again for like 8 years or something. Like, so in their minds, that's just what I would have been, like a kind of crap new comedian. For
Yes.
almost 10 years, when they picture me doing comedy, that's what they would have pictured.
You know what's so interesting? So I started this podcast probably about 5 years ago, and the first one I did, which I think is crazy. I had no profile.
Mm.
I just left accounting maybe at that stage. No one knew who I was. I don't even know if I had Instagram really at the time, and I got 400 views, plays for my first
Mm.
podcast, not knowing anyone. I think that's pretty good when you
Yeah.
have zero. I don't even. Yeah, and it was bad. The guest was really good. I'm very grateful for it, but the sound, the
Yeah.
sequencing, it was like having two different conversations. He carried it, and everyone listened to that. And then of all my friends, they just assumed that was the podcast. And to be honest, I'm quite grateful they don't listen to because they don't need to hear me twice in through the
Yeah.
podcast in life. But it was crazy. A lot of people just assumed that was the podcast, and
Of
still to
course.
this day, many years later. But
Of course.
yeah,
It's,
still,
yeah, exactly the same. I'm sure that's just the way it's going to be for everyone doing this. Your friends see you and you suck,
yep.
and they think you suck for a long time as a result, until one day maybe they see you on a thing or they come to a show and they go, oh, fuck, they got really good.
Yeah.
When did that happen? Yeah.
Bro, I've been amazing for years. It's
Yeah,
just, it was
dude.
you.
It was,
And
I got really good like the day after you saw me.
oh, I wasn't trying when you saw me. And you said you got booked really quickly, which is very uncommon. What was that moment
Mm.
like? Were you just like, wow, I can actually, I can do this for a career?
Because I mean, I think very quickly I was like, um, I embraced this as my new identity.
Yeah.
I was just a man in search of an identity, really, I guess. So I very quickly was like, I'm a fucking comedian, man. Yeah, and I did think this was maybe where everything had been building up to. And a couple of friends of mine were really supportive of that and said, this feels like a combination of all the things that you've been wanting to do in the past, like writing, performing, being funny, being off the cuff. And then when I started bringing music into it as well, it definitely felt like this is now everything from my past coming together into one project. So yeah, and I think I started getting booked really quick because it was just a small scene at the time. This was like, I know it doesn't seem that long ago, but 2011 in Sydney, there weren't many comedians. Now there's so many. And I was a fucking 24-year-old white dude who was confident. So I started getting booked to host really quickly, like to be an
Cool.
MC, like almost right out of the gate. Because I don't know, there weren't many people around, and they were just like, "Oh, this guy, he can talk to people. Let's get him up."
I think that's so cool. But you took advantage of it. That's really cool in you. And the identity, how's it shifted now? Like, are you the comedian? Is it more? Yeah, you tell me.
I'm a comedian. That's what I do, and but I see myself as separate from what I do now, and I don't know when that shift happened, but probably it has to do with my relationship and my friendships and my family. And I just see myself as me, and the comedy is just the thing that I do. That's the passion and that's the job. But me, I'm Cameron. I'm Alex's husband, and I'm the father to my dog Junior.
Oh, I love that. That's quite a shift. That's quite a profound shift, like given your arc as well.
Yeah, I don't know when this started happening. I definitely started relaxing a lot more, maybe in the last 5, 6 years, and started just being more happy with who I am, being okay with who I am, and being like just thinking of comedy as a thing that I do for my own brain and for money rather than it's my entire personality.
Yep.
You know.
And you've allowed for the play and the fun. I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's such a nice shift that you've had. And now we've spoken about music a lot. And I think I wanted to build up to this whole story. And you also said, I believe, in the Will Anderson podcast as well, that you thought you were a failure for not being able to do all the bands and stuff. But now, what a like nice full circle moment that you've incorporated it into your comedy. I think you even worked with Ben Lee, which is one of Australia's greatest artists. What do you think the kid who, when he got stabbed, thought he would never be able to do music would say about like how you've been able to incorporate it in your career?
God, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I think he'd be pretty amazed. I have to remind myself of that sometimes. Like when I was a kid, I mean, I loved Australian music. I still really love Australian music. So artists like Ben Lee and Josh Pike and Eskimo Joe and people like that were bands that I just fucking loved and looked up to so much. And I have all their fucking numbers in my phone now.
Oh, no way.
And I don't, and just because, I don't know why, I think just because of being a comedian that does music that has gotten the attention of some musicians like those guys. And there's some other cool bands like DMAs and these New South Wales and stuff that have, and Luca Brasi and stuff that have like reached out, Flower Moon Band, and sort of found me through that. And I'm already fans of all their music. So that's really cool. It's just bizarre. I think 15-year-old me or whatever would find it really bizarre that it took stepping away from music for me to become friends with these guys and to eventually work with Ben Lee and Josh Pike and stuff like that. I think he would think that's really strange that
But you did it. You made it.
I somehow did it, but it took not being a musician to do it. But yeah, I'm really stoked to get to do music in my stuff now. It genuinely relaxes me and makes me so happy to do it. So cool. And even though I know people think musical comedy is a little bit cheesy, and I certainly did for a long time, and that was a big hurdle I had to get over. The moment that I accepted that is what I'm pretty good at or okay at, I just relaxed a lot more. I was like, fuck, I don't need to improve. I don't need to impress Shane Gillis or all those guys that are cool and comedy purists. I just do what I do. This is what I do. I'm sorry. If you don't like it, that's okay.
I don't think people understand how powerful that is, because a lot of stand-ups, for example, they're like, this is stand-up. You are only a stand-up if you do this. And also, I've heard other comedians talk about jealousy of when they see someone like dominate with musical talents in their comedy, because they're jealous that they can't do it. And so I'm sure you may have heard people being like, no, this is what stand-up. But you embraced. Oh, you did? Okay.
Of course. Yeah. Like, well, I mean, and I even said that before I was playing guitar again, when I was just like, I'm a stand-up, I was a real purist as well. And if I was ever on a lineup with a musical comic or with a clown or someone that you played with audio or did sound cues or whatever, I would get so pissed off. I'm like, fuck, this isn't what it is, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like the moment I started like accepting that this was a thing that I had that was unique to me, and I think I've always been able to write songs. I've always been pretty good with melody and like hooks and stuff. And this is just a way that I could use that whole side of my creativity and infuse it with the stand-up. I just had to get over the possible cringe of other comedians getting pissed off at me.
Yep.
And I've definitely experienced it. Even recently, I did a club in Perth, a really amazing comedy club in Perth called The Lounge, which is just such a great club. Yep. And one of the comics on the lineup was shitting on me before the show. I don't think he'd ever seen me before. And he was like, "Oh, you got your fucking prop. We've got a prop comic here. He's going to get up there and play some songs or whatever." And I didn't care. I was taking it in my stride and everything because I was like, "Yeah, man, I love it. Like, I just love it. I'm sorry. Like, I can't even be embarrassed about it. I just I love that I get to stand up on stage with a guitar around my neck and strum it and play pretty chords and come up with cool melodies. This is what I want to do." And also, I've got a song called Medium Dick that's going to crush, dude.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but it is going to kill. So good luck following that.
What was that moment like when did you see his face afterwards? Like standing ovation, like women throwing their underwear at you. What was that like?
Oh, he was cool. He was cool about it. He complimented the song. I think most people in Australian comedy are pretty good. Like, and if they can tell that you're not doing it from a cynical perspective, like if I literally just started doing it because I thought I want to crush harder, I think people would think I suck. But I think they can tell when they watch me that it's coming from a real place and that I'm like genuinely trying to be a decent musician as well.
Yeah.
Like, but it's 50-50 to me. It's like I want to be a really good comedian and I want to be a really good musician, and I think I have love for both of those things, so hopefully that comes through.
It definitely does, and I've seen your stuff. I think it's so cool about embracing it, because you may have had internal doubts. There's also external pressure, but and I know you had Alexi encourage you, but you did it before and you embraced it and you found this like nice niche and people are going to know you for it, but also your stand up and your music like just adds another layer to you. And I think that's how you thrive. Like you let go of all of that stuff despite all the noise, and you're smiling and you're so happy talking about it. And on stage as well, you can see it as well. I think that's what it's all about. You know,
dude, I think I needed to hear you articulate that. That was really nice. That was really good.
You're recording on your end. You can just clip that bit and make it your ringtone. Also, I want to connect you, even though I probably can't. Do you know a singer named Ilan Kidron? I reckon he lives near you.
Yeah.
He was on the podcast as well, but he was the lead singer of the Potbellies.
Oh, wow.
He is the most talented musician I've ever seen in my life and performer. He is on another. He actually did our wedding, and I'm not just. And he is such a talent, and I want to add him to because he's in the same. I reckon he's in the same league, or maybe even higher than some of the names you gave. And
yeah, I fucking love the Potbellies. That's great.
But also the music in the Potbellies. Say that again.
Is he in Sydney?
Yeah. I think he would live closest to you.
Yeah,
and
nice.
What a performer. I've never, and I don't see a lot of bands, but I've never seen a musician transmute the energy of the entire crowd. And he can play so many different musical instruments, and he can go well away from the Potbellies, from that like clubbing stuff, which I love, but he can play everything. He can sing in like 4 languages as well. He can play the flute. He can, I remember, I think it was at our wedding, he's just, he's singing, everyone's really mesmerized. Then he just pulls out of his pocket a bloody flute and does gimme, gimme, gimme. And it was just like silence before erupted into applause. That is the most talented man right out there. Everyone get on the Ilan Kidron train.
Great call. While we're doing it, I'm going to give a shout out to Josh Pike, who's an incredible Australian musician. And every time he opens his mouth, beauty comes out, and it's fucked. It's so annoying.
Did you say so annoying? You're not the first person to bring him up. I met him actually when I used to be a security guard. And I know what you're thinking. Obviously, I look like a security guard. And he was a very nice guy. And a lot of people brought him up. And you get one last shout out. Can you just pull out what you're drinking? I want to give it the biggest shout out of all time to this protein shake.
Absolutely. Sorry for sipping on this protein shake the entire thing, but this is the Man Shake, which is a protein drink or meals replacement supplement created by Adam Mad Dog McDougall, a former Newcastle Knights NRL player.
Wow.
Who I believe recently sold the company for $100 million or something like that.
So they can definitely,
they need
money
the plug.
To give. They can sponsor you and hopefully this podcast. And
if they were to send me free product, I would. I've been using the Man Shake for years. I love it. It's the tastiest protein shake on the market. I'm not sponsored by them, but if they would like to send me free product, I would love that.
Send them a couple of photos of you, like just your face and like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and do like a before of someone that doesn't look like you, like some like Asian guy, like half your size.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. I also want to get on that. I just want to tie up one thing before we do a rapid fire segment.
Sure.
Actually, I just want to talk about your one last collaborating buddy, Becky Lucas, before we do a rapid fire segment. And I believe, and I think this is really inspiring for a lot of creatives and just people in general, not even in the space of putting content out there. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you put out content with Becky Lucas, maybe to be seen or just for whatever. And then that led to a role in Utopia. Is that?
Yeah, I believe that's how it went down. Becky and I are like borderline soulmates. Like, I think we met when we were 25 or something, and it was instantly one of those friendships where you immediately have shorthand and in jokes, and the way that you're talking is as if you've known each other since you were like 10 years old. Like, I don't know. I don't understand how that happens sometimes. It's like you just all of a sudden connect. And so very quickly we became good friends, and also like immediately our love language is like doing characters with each other and improvising and like forcing each other into a creative corner that they have to work their way out of with jokes or with a character riff.
Cool.
And so, yeah, we would do that just for fun. And then we started filming things like that and putting them up on, this is like, I think even before Instagram had videos. So it was like Twitter videos or something.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think I got a role in Utopia off. I think I used that as my show reel.
Wow,
that's
that's
like
cool.
me and Becky talking or something.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I got a very small role in Utopia, which I was so stoked about because I love that show and I love those guys. And then Becky and I've done a bunch of stuff since. We made a pilot for the ABC.
Oh,
and
that's what I was going to. Yeah.
Yeah. That never went anywhere. We did a bunch of stuff, but
Does that Be Your Own Boss?
yeah, that's right. And then we wrote a series for them as well that never went ahead. A lot of things have come close and fallen over, which is depressing, but I think we'll have something. I think we'll have something eventually. We'll eventually get something that's the two of us, that's a show or something or a film. I just feel like we will. And yeah, she's the best. I fucking love her. She's such a great stand-up too. She's incredible.
She is, and I also really liked her book as well.
Oh, the book's amazing. So cool.
So tell me, from a screenwriting perspective, I've had, highs and lows and almost got there as well. What's it like, with, for example, Be Your Own Boss? You actually shoot it. Like, that's a dream come true. You do the pilot. I think it airs a few times, and then it doesn't get made further than that.
Yeah.
From a screenwriter, that's the scariest thing that can happen, where it's out, but you can't get it all out.
So depressing. And that's happened so many times now. I think that was the first big rejection, but there's been so many more since then. And it hurts, but it doesn't like end your life. I think the most recent one, Alexi and I developed a series and we were in pre-production. We were maybe like 2 weeks out from starting shooting, and then the network pulled it. They pulled a bunch of stuff. It wasn't just our thing.
Yeah,
they pulled, but we were one of the things that got pulled, and we were so close to filming it. And it was a thing we'd worked on for a couple of years. That was pretty heartbreaking. But you bounce back from it. The way that I have started thinking about it is, you just can't control any of those things that have gatekeepers or networks or executives making the decisions above you. So I can only control what I can control. And so far that is my live stuff, my stand-up. So that's probably another guiding principle for me, is just I need to put everything that I love into the stand-up that I make, or the special that I just put out last night, for example. That's got everything that I love in it, because, I'm in charge of that shit. and no one's saying I can't. And maybe I won't get to make that show with Alexi now. So I may as well put all the things I love into this thing that I can put out, you know.
That I needed to hear that. That is a great, insight into something so terrifying to me. What do you think the lesson was with Becky, putting content out there, and it led to probably one of Australia's greatest shows as well?
I think the lesson there is trust. I think it's like authenticity. Like our banter or our like chemistry is incredibly real. It comes from us. It's not us doing an impression of anyone else. It's just the way we talk and the way that we love each other. And I think people who have seen it, like, we're not like the most famous people in the world or whatever, but the people that do like our stuff like it for that, because they can tell it's genuine and authentic and it's coming from within. And it's weird. It's like a weird chemistry.
I love it. That's so cool. And you've got some shows coming up, which is really exciting. Broken Records. You're touring around Australia, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
Sounds really cool. Can you tell me a bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, this is just like I'm putting everything I love into my live shows. And so this is a live tour. It's a live show that has a lot of comedy songs in it, probably more than I've ever done before. I think there's like 8 songs, a lot of stories and jokes. And for the first time ever, I didn't go in with a plan. I just let it naturally, creatively evolve.
Nice.
Weirdly, I got advice from Ben Lee about that. Ben Lee was like, hey man, I think you're at a point in your creativity or your like career where you could let your subconscious speak. And I think you should just let your subconscious come out however it needs to come out.
Whoa.
Instead of trying to force something. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? What do you mean by that? Because he's so like hippie and, like
it's another dimension.
He's totally like the ayahuasca runs in his veins, So, but I was like, all right. He was like, you should just write whatever comes to you and then it'll like be whatever it is. He like was really hippy dippy about it. But I did that. And his whole thing was, it will reveal itself to you what it's about.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa. And then, so I did that. I just wrote a bunch of songs and a bunch of stories and jokes and then didn't know what it was about. And then I started performing it in Perth like a month ago. And after the first show, a friend of mine was there and she was like, I love this show. I love how it's all about masculinity. It's all about your strange relationship with masculinity and, toxic masculinity and trying to be a good man and all this stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what it's about. Shit. My subconscious spoke. It came out. My subconscious was clearly grappling with the idea of like being a man or like being a masculine man, like the men in my family, or being a sensitive man, like who I feel I am, and the fight between those two sides of my personality. And that's what the show is.
How cool is that? You've got this like Yoda-like character, the show's greatest musicians, and he's like, man, just do it. And you're like, I will. And then it comes out, and then this other person sees you and like helps reveal what you've already revealed. And that's so cool.
Well, I think it's a good lesson for all creative people there, which is just like listen to your creative friends around you because they see you clearer than you see you. Yep. And I think I've given a fair few shout outs to my friends on this episode today because those are the people that have pointed me in the right direction because they see the thing that I can't see. And they've all gone like, this is what you should do, or this is you. So I wouldn't, I consider myself a collaborator. I'm not really even a solo artist. I'm like,
that's speaking my language. That's the dream. That's why I do this. And especially from stand up, you could just be all individual. And I love that you shouted out everyone. Becky didn't shout you out, so you can.
I hate her so much.
No, I don't even remember. But more importantly, you shouted out the best protein brand out there, and it's pretty cheap. And we hope
guys check out the Man Shake. You can get individual sachets in a pack of 14, and it's relatively affordable. It's $45, or you can get the classic protein powder pack of one flavor. Look,
What
There's
a
a lot
bargain.
of a lot of amazing things about the Man Shake. Least of all, that it was created by Adam Mad Dog McDougall from the Newcastle Knights.
And what a normal name as well. That is, get around it, everyone. Cool. We're going to put your shows in the episode notes below as well.
Thank you.
And which states are you touring in? I know definitely Melbourne Comedy Festival.
Oh yeah, definitely Melbourne Comedy Festival. I'm there for the month. I've got Sydney after that. I've got Canberra, Brisbane, Newcastle, and I haven't officially added these yet, but Tasmania. I'll be doing a couple of shows in Tasmania as well, and more. There'll be more to come. There's always more. I love doing this shit, and I look forward to lugging my guitar around the country.
It is very clear that you love it because you were smiling the whole time. And, someone just doing comedy shows will be like, yeah, come and see my shows. But the way that you speak with enthusiasm, you can feel it. And I'm sure the audience can see it as well.
Hell yeah.
Congratulations. You're embracing it as well. What we're going to do now is a very quick rapid fire segment to wrap up the podcast.
Let's do it.
I'm going to start with the stupidest question and I'm going to give you no context.
Mm-hmm.
Do you hate James Cameron?
I've met him very briefly. He was out here promoting a documentary that he made about the deep, dark depths of the ocean or some shit. And I was a production assistant on a TV show. So I was holding a boom during a press junket interview.
Nice.
And at the end of it, I said, hi, my name is Cameron James, which is sort of similar to James Cameron. And he just went, okay. And then
Well, I've really enjoyed preparing for you, but I learn a lot about him in the prep because the names get mixed up. So it ruins your Google search. What
He's an
jerk.
interesting guy.
Okay. Your special came out last night.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about it? I just saw it this morning because I saw it just came out. It's very funny. Tell me a bit about how you're feeling about it and how people can watch it.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Grouse House is the network. That's the comedy network and channel that Auntie Donna's company run. I love those guys. I love Auntie Donna. I love the Grouse House crew. They put out a little funny documentary series that Alexi and I made called Finding Yeezus a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So that's the in that I had with them. And then ever since then, they've been talking about wanting to put comedy specials up. And so when I had the idea for this one, I pitched it to them right away. Like, I have this idea. I want it to be part live comedy show, part fake rock documentary. So there's a lot of fake behind the scenes footage of me being a kind of wanker musician in a recording studio. It's got my name, but it's a heightened version of me. But I love it because I love Spinal Tap. I love the Christopher Guest movies. So this is my way of tapping into that world of doing a little fake rock documentary and splicing it in with my live show. I'm so happy with it. It was cheap. I spent a lot of money on it, but it was cheap as far as those things are concerned. It was an independently made thing. But when we were editing it, I edited it with my friend Tom, who I went to uni with, who shot all the fake documentary stuff with me, and he's the off-screen voice in it as well. When we were editing it, at one point I was just like, look, for better or worse, this is 100% my sense of humor. And if people don't like it, fair enough, but I like it. This is what I like. Nice. I like all this shit. Songs, jokes, riffing, fake egotistical characters in fictional documentary settings. This is my shit. So I have to put it out because this is just what I like.
True.
So if people like it, great. If they don't, I don't care.
Well, we'll put that in the episode notes as well so people can check it out.
Hell yeah.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working?
And not listening to music as well, because I like, my wife and I really like hanging out, cooking, and listening to music. I also like hanging out with my dog, and I love movies. I love watching movies. I'm a sucker for just chucking a movie on and laying on the lounge.
I'm not going to comment on them, but that's living the dream. What are you most proud of?
Hmm. That's a great question. Shit. Personally, I think I'm a better guitarist than I was when I was actually playing in bands.
Cool.
And I'm proud of that because because I don't have to be a good guitarist. I could just shit some chords out.
Yeah.
But I was watching the special last night and I was like, fuck, I'm actually pretty good at that. Like I reckon I'm better now than I was when I was 20 and playing in a serious band. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. Awesome. What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Fuck. I would love to make movies. That would be really cool. I think I'll do that.
I think you will. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah. Well, I think if you genuinely love and have a passion for the thing you want to try, you owe it to yourself to do it. You just have to do it. Because what are you going to do? Like, just not do the thing you like? You have to do it. You have to try it. Don't worry about people not liking it or your friends making fun of you or whatever. Just do it for you and do it because you love it.
Great advice. We're going to plug that everywhere. Before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you, what is the one question I should have asked you?
Shit, that's a good question. If I have any tattoos.
And do you?
Yeah, I have a full body tattoo.
Full body? Like, did you ever watch Prison Break?
Yeah, I got the Prison Break. I actually got the Prison Break tattoo done all over my torso.
Yeah, I can see that.
Big fan of that show.
So no tattoos?
No tattoos. Do you have any?
No. I'm way too...
Culturally not allowed.
So I'm Jewish, and I think there are rumors that you weren't allowed because of the Holocaust, and I don't know if that's true, but regardless, because, everyone got like the barcode and
yeah.
I don't think that's actually true. I don't know. Everyone can Google.
Where does that come? Because wasn't it? I thought it was even further back than the Holocaust. The whole idea of you can't get buried in a Jewish cemetery if you have tattoos.
That's what I heard, but I don't think that's true. I could be wrong. I know that's what people used to say. Like, I also thought that religious Jews have sex through a sheet.
Yeah.
So I'm clearly not the right person to ask. I don't know if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Where Larry thinks he's going to sleep with the religious Jew and brings a sheet with a hole in it. It's like, what the fuck's that, Larry? So I don't know. I think a lot of these, I don't know, but I'm giving homework to the audience.
Let's get people to call in. Call in if you know more about the Jewish cultural tattoo thing than us.
And if you've ever had the luxury of using a sheet in that context as well, I'd love to know as well.
I'd love to know that. And I'd love to try it. I might try it with my wife.
Yeah. Good. Keep us posted. I'm really excited. And before I love ending on a high, so I'm glad that we're ending there. Before we go, how can people follow you and keep up to date with you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram. It's at I am Cameron James. I deleted TikTok and Twitter recently just because I got so sick of looking at everything. It was all bumming me out. But I'm still on Instagram and on YouTube. And so they can watch the special.
Cool. Everything that we've spoken about will be in the episode notes, and especially that amazing protein shake by Mad Dog, whatever his name is.
Mad Dog McDougal.
Adam Mad Dog. Yeah, so looking forward to a juicy pay rise in the podcast. And thank you so much. You're inspiring. I love your authenticity, and I think you're doing everything great, and really happy to have spoken with you.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really loved this. This is such a great podcast, and you're incredible at it. You're a really good host. Really great questions, and the vibes were off the charts.
Oh, amazing. We're mad dogs ourselves. I'm going to tell my parents that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I love how Cam talks about the shift he made when he decided to embrace fun and what interested him and how it led to success. Cam highlights how initially in his career, he wasn't doing it for his right reasons and perhaps was making decisions based on what he thought others wanted, thinking it had to be a certain way. He explains that if you're not doing it for yourself, then who are you doing it for? If you don't love it, will others? You may not get the satisfaction in your career if you neglect yourself and your interest. Cam is an inspiration for asking the deep, tough, internal questions and making a conscious choice to embrace himself. Cam chased what actually makes him happy, and the rest is history. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Having fun is not a diversion from a successful life. It is the pathway to it. Martha Beck.
Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.